All right, it's time to give Andrew Berry his grades. It's going to be interesting to look at. I think Andrew Berry, spoiler warning, did a pretty good job this year as far as building this roster. I think this team had a bevy of issues. I don't think a lot of those issues are with the roster. Like maybe you could say wide receiver was an issue. I think they fumbled that situation more than it was an issue with the roster, right? I think they kind of fumbled an opportunity there with a certain wide receiver. We know who his name is. But nonetheless, let's kind of look at this year for Andrew Berry, and let's give it a grade, man. We're going to start with who he lost, who he chose to let go. Let's see if there are any interesting guys that he let go that kind of cost us. And the only one I can see, the big name, right, that they lost was like Sheldon Richardson. I don't think you ended up missing Sheldon Richardson as much as we kind of thought that might be the case. Is meh as Malik Jackson was, he was just about as mad as Sheldon Richardson was out there in Minnesota, if not a little bit less. So I think that was actually a smart move, getting off of that contract with Sheldon and then just going to a one-year prove it with Malik Jackson there. Larry Ogunjobi, who you lost in the middle. You got the same stuff you would have gotten out of Larry Ogunjobi pretty much out of Malik McDowell. Now, the issue is that it don't seem like Malik McDowell is going to be in the NFL. He got other issues he's got to deal with before he can even think about football. And Larry Ogunjobi has had a pretty good year, pretty productive year with the Bengals. But Larry's always been one of those guys you got to use in a specific role. And the way that the Browns use their tackles, I don't think he really worked in that role. So I don't mind moving off of him. No other moves here that really stand out to me as like a bad loss. Let's look at his additions. Jidaevion Clowney, one of the best free agent acquisitions the Browns have had ever. I mean it. Ever. What is the better free agency acquisition that they have had than Jidaevion Clowney, right? Like, we haven't had many great free agency acquisitions because, remember, Jarvis was a trade. Odell was a trade, and not like we had a ton of success with Odell. But who else is out there that's a free agency pickup that's worked out more to ideal than Jidaevion Clowney? That's a pretty big name, right? Last guy I can think of is like Porter Gustin, that kind of worked out, but then at the end of that deal, it got too bloated. No, Jidaevion Clowney might be the best free agency signing. I mean, let me know in the comment section. Let me know. I need more clarity. I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head right now. But Jidaevion seems like he might be the best dude that we've ever signed in free agency. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that's pretty arguable at this point, if not just outright correct. Great year, 9 sacks, ton of pressures. I think 22. Him and Myles Garrett almost had like 50 pressures combined. My goodness, that defensive line was crazy. The pressure that we got from the edge this year, especially because we didn't really blitz that much. The Browns don't blitz that much, and they got a ton of pressure this year. That's excellent. You can't ask for more than that. I mean, like, think about how much the Steelers blitz and how much the Browns don't blitz, and the fact that Myles Garrett had more pressures than TJ Watt, like, that's incredible. So there is that. Troy Hill, I think that was a pretty solid signing. We talked about Malik Jackson. John Johnson was one that it started off pretty disappointing, but at the end of the year, it got better. It didn't get to where you wanted it to be, but maybe in year 2, he makes a little bit of a leap. So jury's still out on that one. I'm not down on it, though, because he did have a pretty strong end of the year. Malik McDowell, it worked out for what it was, right, which was a one-year kind of super tryout deal for him. Unfortunately, it seems like he's going to have bigger things in football to worry about. Takk McKinley, underrated. That worked. Takk was pretty good for this team when he was able to be out there. Unfortunately, he tore his Achilles. That's real rough for an athletic pass rusher like him. I hope he can come back from that, come back strong. But it's real unfortunate for Takk. Okay, we got to get to a kicker here. He did sign Chase McLaughlin. I mean, like, I'm not about to go out of my way here for, like, Cody Parkey or anything like that, but I'm just not a fan of how they handle the kicking situation. I felt like there were multiple times before they actually moved off of Chase where most other teams that are better at finding kickers than the Cleveland Browns have been in the last 6 years would have moved off the kicker. It's just one of those positions. And I think people misunderstand, and I don't know whether this is on purpose or by accident or it's just like me not communicating it well, but I think people misunderstand what I mean when I talk about kickers and why I don't trust them. Why I say that is that, one, until a kicker has proven to you that they are a really good kicker, you don't have a kicker. Like, you need to operate as if you don't have a kicker, because the way you find a kicker is by volume, right? You don't usually find these guys by drafting them in the draft. That just isn't how that works, right? Like, yeah, you'll get a Sebastian Janikowski. The Bengals got Zach McPherson, but the Browns had Austin Seibert and Zane Gonzalez, who literally cost the Browns like 3 games each, and you drafted that, right? Like, you can cost yourself a lot when you go with that kicker in the draft pick, because, one, you're wasting a draft pick on the kicker when most of the great kickers in the league are undrafted free agents. 2, you're putting this sunk cost into a kicker who, what if he misses his first like 6 kicks or something crazy like that? You don't want to cut him because you spent a 5th round pick on him. You're kind of stuck with the dude that you drafted. If something better comes along, you're stuck with the dude who you drafted. Imagine after the Ravens decided they're going to move off Billy Cundiff, right, because he missed that kick in the AFC Championship game. And they decided that they were going to draft the kicker, but also going to bring in this young, undrafted fellow out of Texas named Justin Tucker. And while Justin looked great in camp, they had to hold on to the kicker that they picked in the 5th round because they picked the dude in the 5th round. You see what I mean? Why I don't like drafting kickers especially. I think volume does it best. Bring in a ton of undrafted free agents next year. Have a lot of these guys on file. Have them kick at the stadium before the season starts, and just really get a good grip on what kickers you can bring in a moment's notice that could be available, because you want to switch these dudes in and out until you find the one dude that can kick, right? It's like one of those things that either you can do or you can't do, right? It's not one of those things you develop into. You either are or you're not a great kicker in the NFL. And if they prove that they aren't a great kicker, which means missing sub 40-yard field goals more than like a couple of times, missing not being like any level of accurate on 50-plus yard field goals, and what my biggest pet peeve of all time is missing extra points, right? If you're below 90 on extra points, you should automatically be cut from the team. I'm talking 90% accuracy on that. So that's just where I'm at with kickers. I know kickers are important. I know you need to have one on the roster. But when it comes to how you find these dudes, I disagree with a lot of what people think about how you go about and find it, which is they think of it like it's quarterback. It's just not quarterback. You find these dudes by volume. You need to just bring in as many as you can and have these dudes kick and just have a record of them. So when one misses a bunch of kicks during the season, you could just move on to the next one. Because until you do that rotation, you ain't going to find a kicker, right? But that's what you need to do, right? That's how Justin Tucker got there. That's how Chris Boswell got to Pittsburgh. Cincinnati got lucky with their draft pick, and good for them. But everybody else in the league finds the kickers that way. That's how they do it, and that's how I think we need to look at that kicking situation. So I would love to see a different approach there with kicker, punter as well, all special teams until you find somebody who sticks. I think defensive tackle is a big sore spot in Andrew Berry's whole 2 years here, right? He has not been able to find any long-term solutions or short-term solutions for that defensive tackle spot. He's tried. He's failed. Andrew Billings, who's hit and swing and miss. Jordan Elliott looks like a swing and miss. Tommy Togiai might be a single or a double, but it ain't the home run you need to hit right now. Malik McDowell looked like a home run, but you were taking some gambles off the field with him that just did not work out. So that's going to be the one thing, if we get to year 5 or year 4 with Andrew Berry, we still ain't got no defensive tackles. That's going to be something that we're going to want to see fixed over the next couple of years, is that hole that he has had at defensive tackle. Anthony Walker, I think, look, it's great I love that they drafted JOK in the second round and they showed that they'll value certain guys at linebacker. But I think they think everybody else is pretty replaceable in that linebacker room, and their mentality on how they just switch these dudes out, right? You go from Anthony Walker, and you had B.J. Goodson last year. They just seem to want to rotate these guys in and out at a cheap number. That's what Anthony Walker was. He wasn't spectacular, but he was fine. He was pretty good for the development of those young guys. I'll be fine if he got brought back. I really would like Malcolm Smith to be brought back. I like that they did that this year. I think that was a very smart re-signing that they had here during the training camp period. So I have to give them credit for that. And also just stacking the back end of this roster. Just did a really good job. Again, I mentioned some of these guys before, but MJ Stewart, AJ Green III, they found a lot of guys in the back end of that defense that were able to step up and play well. It's a credit to Joe Woods, and it's a credit to Andrew Berry for finding those guys. Let's talk about the draft real quick. Greg Newsome, I think he played excellent for a rookie this year. JOK, I'm not about to slander JOK on this channel. He was excellent. Anthony Schwartz, they asked him to do too much. I think they asked him to do way too much. We'll see what he turns out to be in a couple of years. I'm not enthused by what I saw this year. James Hudson, wasn't enthused at what I saw at the beginning of the year. I am enthused at what I have seen at the end of the year. Tommy Togiai, book's still out on that. Tony Fields, can't even judge it. He didn't play that much. Same thing with Richard LeCount. And Demetric Felton's virtually in that same realm. They tried to use him a little bit early on, but then that fizzled out and they just kind of went away from it. So all in all, I like what they did there. We have to mention that they re-signed the whole offensive line, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I'm a fan of all of those moves that they did during the season. Andrew Berry, he doesn't get an A because one of the things I do think is negative is he gets a hand in that fumbling Odell thing. Like what happened there? This team is wide receiver hungry, and we let a wide receiver who, whether you think he's still elite or not, is still somewhat productive, walk for nothing. That doesn't make sense when you had nobody to replace him. How did that go down? Why did it get to the point that it did? Everybody in the building that's in leadership has a hand in that, and certainly Andrew Berry is in leadership, so that keeps him from getting an A, in my opinion. But he does get a B, a solid B. The defensive tackle woes, the Andrew Billings flop this year, also some things that are going to bring him down just a bit. He really needs to figure out or really hit a home run at defensive tackle sooner than later, because it's been a hole here while he's been here, and he's made several attempts at trying to fix it. So we'll see what happens with Andrew Berry as the year goes on, as the draft season heats up, as the regular season for Andrew Berry, which is the draft season, heats up. And that will determine a lot about this team. He's going to have a pretty good pick again, 13th overall. We'll see what he does with that. But that's my grade for Andrew Berry. Let me know your grade down below. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.